But if for some reason the individual's hiring authority or supervisor wasn't appropriate to go to, then certainly our contact information is out on the policies related to the EEO, sexual harassment policy, the violence-free policy. So there's lots of ways on our website that people would know to come to us. And so if we were to get a complaint filed with us, then we would essentially start by doing intake on what the specific situation was. So if it was a form that was provided, a letter, a phone call, we would take the time to figure out what the terms and circumstances are, and then perhaps do an intake interview or conversation with that person, and then determine from there. Again, all of these are so individualized. I'm not trying not to answer, but they're so individualized that it just depends, frankly. But anytime these come to our attention, whether it's violence or sexual harassment, or any of these, frankly, we're very diligent about pursuing and making sure that every allegation has been pursued.
Okay, do you have a detailed process that you could get to legislators? Like what happens after intake to these cases? Do you handle the investigation?
It depends. So do we have a process document?
If it warrants an investigation, then what happens from there?
Again, often to answer your question, I don't necessarily have a process document for this because it is very dependent on the situation. Many of these do happen at the level of within the agency, and we may come in and consult with them on the investigation, but the time in which DAS resources and staff get involved, or when perhaps there's allegations that involve people of the leadership team in an agency, and so then there would be a conflict of interest, for example, for that agency to conduct the investigation. Or if there's something very egregious that the agency feels like it needs a technical expertise to manage, those are the types of investigations that we actually conduct ourselves. We serve about 18,000 employees and I have less than 50 staff, so we do have to manage in partnership with the departments. We're just not staffed to do every investigation. So I don't have a process document, but generally that is how that works. We review, and if we're not participating or we're not doing or conducting the investigation, generally the personnel officer, who's essentially the HR contact for that agency from my team, would be providing them guidance and counsel on the side to help them walk through it.
Okay, we're going to need more details on that because we've had a number of people reach out to us. They've contacted DAS. The investigation was mishandled. The person who was the perpetrator was notified that they were reaching out to DAS to try and get some help. So we need to know what process you're following for these investigations. Another concern that I've had is just the number of people who have been hired at DAS who, for positions that were not advertised, and they all appear to be friends with just one or two members at DAS. Was there any point where you felt, I need to step in, we are not doing equal opportunity employment here, and you're not going through the appropriate process, or do you not get yourself involved in that?
I certainly advise and counsel that we make sure that even for at-will or non-merit positions, I suppose is the more appropriate term for non-merit positions, I certainly provide guidance and counsel to all hiring leaders, including those within my own department, to be looking for the candidates who are most qualified. And I always advise that the brass ring system, even though not required, is a great solution to help source candidates.
Okay, Senator Garrett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Michelle, I've just got 2 or 3 follow-ups with you here. I understood you to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but in response to some of the other questions, that you and your group spent quite a little time analyzing positions at DAS, is that correct? And the classifications maybe would be more precise.
Just want to make sure I'm answering the question correctly. Are you talking about the one specific to the September layoff, or?
Well, I'm talking about the time that you talked about when your group was, I took it, spent quite a little time analyzing the positions, and I understand you weren't there in September of 2011, but apparently the issue came up a little later on, and I understood you to say that you went over those classifications.
I'm trying to remember everything I've talked about so far. My team is responsible for the classification system for the broad organization. So on an operational kind of daily basis, we have team members reviewing and classifying positions all the time. It's part of the operation. So yes, my team does spend time doing that. And DAS, similar to all the other agencies, would submit their PDQs, so those position description questionnaires, into my team for review and classification as well. Does that help?
Okay, and well, you know, there was some controversy over changing some of the positions from merit to at will.
Okay.
Now, were you involved in analyzing the new at will positions to determine if they were appropriate or not?
So, sorry, I understand your question now. As it relates to the confidential employee.
Yes.
So I was involved with constructing the new rule, the new definition of confidential employee, and then I have a team of personnel officers who have relationships and assignments with each of the agencies. And that was the group within my organization that was responsible for consulting with each of those departments to determine what was appropriate in terms of the implementation of the merit exemption based on the confidential employee definition, the revised confidential employee definition.
And did I understand you to say that after you went through this process, that you determined that those positions were properly classified?
At that time, during that process, we weren't necessarily looking at classification again, and perhaps these are my terms, so the classification is kind of that broader connection back to jobs and pay grade. I think the process that we're talking about is the merit exemption based on the confidential definition.
Yeah, I'm probably not using the right term. Correctly, that's
So during that process, we worked with each of the agencies, and to this point, there have been 230. So 230 employees who have been identified as being confidential under that revised definition and therefore became merit exempt. Not necessarily at will, although I would say that probably most of them are likely not covered by the contract. But I would just want to draw the distinction that just because they become merit exempt doesn't necessarily mean they're at will. And so there were 230, which is, I did the quick numbers this morning, I think we're talking about less than 2% of the population became merit exempt as a result of the change to the confidential employee definition.
And you concluded that that was proper, that they did meet the definitions for being confidential employees.
Correct.
Okay.
In conjunction with those hiring authorities.
And in addition, in talking about rules changes, now are those rules that are submitted to the legislature for review?
The rules I'm talking about are, yes, go through the formal administrative rules committee process.
All right, so the legislature would have approved these rules in addition to your committee then?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
That process occurred in December of 2012.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Reardon, I've got some questions for you also.
Sure. Yes, sir.
Sorry, thank you.
Just so I want to make sure, reviewing here, the way your board works, and am I correct? I know most state boards have to have a political balance to them, is that correct?
That is correct, Senator. The code says there shall be a balance on the boards, not only politically, but gender balance as well.
Yes.
And, yeah.
Right. And so your board is made up of 3 people.
Correct.
And so you have how many Democrats, how many Republicans, how many male, how many female?
Well, the 2 newest board members came on in 2012. And one is an independent, one is a Republican, and then the person who is replacing me is also a Republican.
All right, and you're a Democrat.
And I'm, yeah, sure, you knew that. Yeah, I'm a Democrat.
Yes. And, you said that you were, or I think you said, at least in the article, that you were not, you'd been notified you were not going to be reappointed.
Yeah, that happened, let's see, I think I found out right at the very end of February or early March that the governor was going to go a different direction. And, you know, that's his choice. I understand that. I had a good run at PERB. I don't have any, you know, I had a great run at PERB. So I was hoping I could get reappointed one more time just because of my age, but it didn't happen, and that's okay. That has nothing to do with the issue that I brought forward, though. I don't think.
Okay. Now, when was it that the incident you're complaining about happened, that you were pressured by people from the governor's office? When was that?
That happened in 2012, not too long after the two new board members came on.
All right.
Janelle started in February to replace a retiree from the board, and then was reappointed for a full term. The terms end on April 30th and start on May 1st, so she was just there from February to May 1st, and then she got a new 4-year term. And then Jamie Van Fossen, former state representative Van Fossen, was appointed and started on May 1st of 2012. And then it was late summer, I think, if I recall, it was right in that time frame that that we got the call about
Okay.
a person that they wanted to put in our shop.
Now, my question is, you got this pressure and really felt uncomfortable and things have really deteriorated. Did you complain to anybody back at that time? Did you publicize, did you bring that out to the newspaper or legislature?
No, I did not. I complained to the governor's office. I complained to them. I said, we don't want to do it this way. This isn't what we should be doing. But again, I felt, and in hindsight, Senator is always 20/20. And in hindsight, I should have convinced my co-board members to tell the governor, no, we're not going to hire a person this way. I became fearful, frankly, as a person. I became fearful of my living, of having a living, and you know, I've got bills to pay like everybody else, and that was a part of it. I think, you know, the two new board members, I think they were concerned, you know, and here they are coming on brand new, and we don't want to see our budget cut because it was the.
Okay,
It wasn't an open threat, but it was like, okay, if you don't do this, then you're going to have consequences in regards to budget, and we concluded also salaries. So go ahead, Senator.
Well, just to follow up on that, the board's order that if you don't hire, I think it's Wilson, if you don't hire this fellow, there will be consequences to your budget, or there will be consequences.
It was, this was over 2 or 3 meetings, okay? What was conveyed is that our budget would be seriously impacted if we did not bring this person
Well,
on board.
excuse me, I want to be clear on this because earlier you said you
Consequences.
were told there'd be consequences.
Right.
Now you're saying you were told there'd be consequences to your budget. Now,
Right.
I'm unclear. It seems to me you said different things. You have at one point said it was implied, and I felt that there was an implication. But then another time it sounded like you're saying that it was an explicit statement that there'd be consequences to your budget. Now,
The implication was there would be consequences to our budget.
okay, but not explicitly stated. That was an implication.
Right.
Okay. That's
Yes.
what I'm trying to be clear.
Yes, it was an implication. It was not explicitly
Okay.
stated. that, hey, we're gonna cut your budget if you don't do this. No, it was implied that there would be consequences to our budget if, I mean, how else are there gonna be consequences, Senator?
Well, I understand that, but would you please be precise and tell us exactly what you were told, and then we do understand you took it, there were implications, but it seems to me you keep shifting your statement as to what you were told.
To me,
exactly.
okay, to me personally, it was an implied threat that our budget would be seriously impacted if we did not hire Mr. Wilson.
But you were not explicitly told that your budget would be impacted. if you did
That's
not.
correct.
Okay.
You're correct, Senator.
Okay,
Yes.
that's all I'm trying to establish.
Yes. No, you're correct.
All right. Now, at the time, did you complain to anybody other than the governor's office? Did you complain to the legislators, the news media?
No,
No one else?
No, we didn't talk to the news media. Again, internally, we had discussions, and there was lots of complaining internally in the office. And I did complain to Mr. Boink that I didn't think this was right, and we really didn't want to do things this way. That's not how it was done, and you know, again, further conversations. You know, I frankly, I was fearful for my own living, and that was wrong of me. And I think we were all fearful that the budget would be really hurt if we didn't do this, and to the point of we might have to lay off all our staff. You know, I mean, that's kind of how we were feeling. And again, these are feelings, but it, you know, looking back, it's a fear-based thing, and I should have just faced up to my fears and said, no, we're not going to do it that way, and convinced my colleagues to do that too. But we didn't. We succumbed to the pressure.
All right, and so fast forward now, a year or so, now you find out you wanted to get rehired, you said.
I was hoping to get reappointed, but
Yes, but now you know you're not going to be rehired.
that's right.
So now you feel it's appropriate to bring these things out that you didn't.
Well, no,
bring out.
I told my colleagues last week, Senator, we knew that the press was starting to poke around and ask questions about situations like this going on, that people were being hired and put in places without going through the normal hiring process. And I told my colleagues last week, I said, if I get asked, I'm going to tell the truth. I'm not going to hide it. I'm going to tell the truth. And I got asked.
Who asked you?
Jason Clayworth from the Des Moines Register called me.
Do
And
you know how he happened to call you and ask you that?
well, I don't know. He's a reporter. He hears a lot of things, and I don't know how he heard it, but he did. So I just told him the truth. This is how it happened.
I think you said that you didn't feel like, I guess it's Judge Wilson was doing a very good job of that.
Well, again, these things are. These things are subjective, and I realize that. I have a subjective view. I don't feel that his writing product is very good. I have a great objection to what he said in that one opinion that we have taken up on our own motion. And I don't mean to be nasty to him, but I don't think he's doing a very good job, right?
In listening to your discussion here, would it be fair to say that I get the impression he may have a little different point of view, maybe a little.
Absolutely, I'm sure he has a very different point of view. Absolutely, and we haven't exactly clashed, Senator. We've had a lot of discussions. He's put forward a lot of ideas, and we've followed up on a lot of them and said, no, this doesn't work. Okay, this we can look at. It is. There's a lot of things that have just gone on in the office that are disturbing to me in terms of relationships.